name is Sheridan Ruth, and I am here to welcome you home. This is the Exposed Podcast. Where we reveal the body-based ways to ease anxiety, heal trauma, and create an empowered connection with love and money using nervous system regulation and a healthy dose of self-compassion. Hello, beautiful, beautiful listener. Today we are talking about domestic violence, abuse, and the personal development that you really need to do after you're in such a traumatic situation. I'm talking with a wonderful woman called Lianne. Lianne is the founder and CEO of Watch Us Thrive, which is a personal development podcast that talks about mental health, healing from trauma, and that keeps us stuck in toxic relationships and how to reconnect and with your inner magic. So Lianne escaped a physically and emotionally abusive relationship, and she realized that she was actually attracting the same type of toxic partner over and over again. And she realized that she was the common denominator in these relationships and knew it was time for a hard reset in order to begin healing her deep-rooted wounds. In the process of her journey to healing, Lianne started her podcast, Watch Us Thrive, to share the life stories of what she's gone through. It has since become a beautiful platform where guests share their own life experiences of turning their pain into power and their trauma into triumph. Now, my dear listener, if you are moving towards your own path of triumph and you would like to do so in a way that is trauma-informed and body-based so that you don't end up in the same toxic patterns, or maybe you're in a relationship at the moment and you're still kind of trying to figure out if it's a problem, if it's toxic, or if it's just kind of something that's going on in your head, you are in the perfect place. This is something that I help my clients with, and I would love to help you with it as well. I do have an option where you can book a free 30-minute expansion call where you'll receive free guidance, coaching, and support around your unique situation and your needs. And we will also explore whether or not working through my EASE framework is the best fit for you right now. You're going to walk away with tangible action steps to guide you to that space of thriving and peace and security and safety inside of your life and your relationships. Go ahead and book it now. You'll find the link in the show notes, or you can just go on to www.sheridanruth.com/expansion. Cannot wait to have you listening with me in the episode, so let's dive into it. Welcome. Guys, I am with Lianne, who herself has a really wonderful podcast, which is called Watch Us Thrive. And today we are going to be talking about something that can be a little bit difficult. So I'm putting in a little trigger warning here. We're going to be talking about domestic violence. We're going to be talking about abuse, and we're going to be talking about relationships after these really difficult things. Lianne and we both have a story of being in a really violent or abusive relationship, and we're both proof that you can create really wonderful lives afterwards. In saying that, it's a big topic, and today we're going to be really raw about it. So, Lianne, without further ado, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about what your journey has been, and maybe if there was like that pivotal point where you kind of realized, oh, okay, this is what I'm in.
Yeah.
And I would like to be experiencing something else, and kind of like how you've gotten here to be building this amazing thing today.
Absolutely. Well, first, before we even get started, I just want to say thank you for inviting me on to have this really important and uncomfortable conversation. I think it's so necessary for women to continue having these types of conversations, as taboo as they are and there's such a stigma around toxic relationships and domestic violence, and it's happening so much more than we even realize. But there's such a shame surrounding it that whatever happens behind closed doors, that's where we're going to keep it. And we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to give it a name. We're not going to give it a voice, a face, anything like that. And that's how the cycle of abuse continues. That's how these women and men too, but predominantly women find themselves feeling stuck. And that's really how I felt in my own situation, even though it was a very quick relationship. Me and my abuser, we were only together for 10 months, but it felt like 10 years. And it didn't start off that way, which is very common for a lot of these types of relationships. It's very trendy nowadays that, narcissists and love bombing and all these things, a lot of people are talking about it, but it's true when it comes to being in those types of relationships. And that's what I experienced in the beginning. It progressed very quickly. 5 days after me and him met, he told me he was falling in love with me. 2 weeks later, he asked me to be his girlfriend. And a month after that, he moved into my apartment. And that's really now me being on the other side and seeing the relationship for what it really was. That was just his way of slowly gaining that power and control and manipulation over me for his benefit. And that's definitely something that's very common in these types of relationships. Um, there was cheating, there was lying, there was going behind my back. He would go missing for hours, sometimes days on end. And there was gaslighting and all the things that people are talking about nowadays. But when I was in it, I knew that something didn't feel right, but I ignored that feeling anyway. And I think that's definitely something that a lot of women who find themselves in these types of abusive relationships can relate to. You don't really understand it until you're in it and until you're out of it, and then you really look at it for what it is. There was definitely a whole bunch of red flags that I chose to ignore. And I say it that way because not that I deserved what happened to me, because I definitely don't think that. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, even my worst enemy. But I did play a role in my part in allowing that to happen and how it progressed. Like the first time that it got physically abusive for me, in my opinion, that should have been it. That should have been like, this is a deal breaker. We're not going to continue this. I'm not going to continue to accept this type of abuse and disrespect and lying and all of that. But the girl that I was back then, definitely not the person that I am today. And I know now that there was a huge lack of confidence within me, which is something that I struggle with pretty much my entire life since I was a kid. There was no self-value, no self-worth. There was a fear of being alone, a fear of not being able to handle being by myself. And that's definitely a cycle that I continued even before that relationship. I talk about it a lot on my podcast that I've had a really shitty, I hope I can curse, if not, I'm sorry, track record of toxic relationships. Each one got progressively worse, but I would not take the time to heal from the end of that relationship. Instead
Yeah.
of really sitting in that feeling of heartbreak, of sadness, of grief, of loss, because it is a loss when you're ending a relationship with someone that you thought you were going to be with forever. My coping mechanism, which was very toxic and very unhealthy, was I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to sit in this feeling. So I'm going to find someone else to numb me out and take away this feeling that I don't even need to know that it's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would just
Yeah.
casually date or hop into the next relationship or, you know, live a promiscuous life. I'm going to be completely honest. Like there was moments in that my life that I was just so terrified of being alone. And
Yeah.
I mean, now being on the other side of it, like I've purposely taking myself off of the dating scene. I'm going on 2 years of celibacy. Like, Lianne is so focused on her growth and her personal healing. And in order for me personally to do that, I needed to be in this state of solitude and of
Yeah.
really like going within and figuring out, why was it that I felt that this was acceptable? Why did I think it was okay to allow a man to continuously cheat on me or lie to me or put his hands on me or whatever the case may be? The only time that I've really been able to heal from that was when I completely put the focus back on me and not focus on other people.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with like the need to bring yourself back to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something that happens when we actually don't do that. And I know that my beautiful listeners, I know that some of you might be listening and even having this thought, which is we end up with something called relationship anxiety, where we end up in another relationship where we are totally sure if it's a good idea. And if that's you, you might even be listening to this podcast and be in a safe relationship, but you're not able to discern whether it's a safe relationship. And maybe you're thinking, oh, wait, my guy went away and he didn't answer his phone for a couple hours. And then when he was with the boys and he said he was going to come home, but then he didn't. And wait, what if he's actually cheating on me and I don't actually know
Mm-hmm.
about it? And he raised his voice at me that one time. Is he emotionally abusive?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to disclaim and say that what Lianne and I are talking about, we're talking about like chronic abuse
Yeah.
and physical violence.
Yeah.
And whenever there is physical violence and chronic abuse, the answer is, okay, let's remove you from there because now we're talking about a lack of safety. But when we don't do what Lianne is talking about, and what I am hoping that we're doing, is when we don't come back to ourselves and do our personal development and process and grieve and heal, we end up in a relationship or many relationships where something just doesn't feel right. And I like that's what I did. I had this really abusive relationship. I finally removed myself from it. Mine was longer, it was 5 years. And I even hesitate to say that it was abusive and he was my abuser because I am very aware that I had a really big role in that. And I helped co-create that environment. And yes, I was treated in ways that I should never have been treated, but I also, and it was very much the same. I was lacking confidence. I didn't trust myself. It was so many different things. And then I ended up in this really wonderful, safe relationship. And I actually ended up creating a lot of toxicity because my anxiety was so
Mm.
intense. Like he was totally
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine,
Yeah.
but I couldn't understand that it was okay. And so I
Yeah.
tested him and I pushed him and I got anxious and I got angry and I got abusive myself because I actually
Mm.
couldn't even conceptualize that's not how you speak to a person. I couldn't even
Yes.
understand or what a healthy relationship was because I had just never like I had never seen it.
That's the thing. Like, when people like you and I, that's the norm for us. We're so used to the chaos. We're so used to the arguments, to the cheating, to the explosions back and forth, that when something normal or safe comes along, that triggers our nervous system. It's like our body is so used to being like this, like fight or flight all the time, and then when something calm comes, it's like, oh shit, what's going on? And
Is
then
this
we start to
okay?
yeah, like and it's such a like a whole mind thing that you go back and forth. That's why it's so important to take the time, like I said before, to really heal by yourself, because you don't want to blame the next man or woman for what the last one did. That's not fair to them. That's
Yeah.
on you to really figure out how to heal from that, and knowing that you don't need to work on that by yourself. For me, in my own personal healing, when I hit my rock bottom moment, and I know I didn't share that when you asked before, my pivotal moment was because my ex almost killed me. Like, it
Mm.
got to the point that it was so physically violent that night. The night of March 12th, 2021 into the morning of March 13th, 2021, he almost killed me. And for your listeners, anyone who's hearing this, I tell the full in-depth story on my own podcast. It's episode 10, My Personal Journey of Overcoming Domestic Violence. I can send it to you if you want to put it in the show notes so people can listen to it. But, and, I tell everything that happened, but that was it for me. I physically escaped my abuser because if I didn't, me and you would not be sitting here today having this conversation. And I was living out of state. My sister booked me a one-way ticket back home. Nobody knew what was going on until that night, which is another thing that a lot of people in domestic violence relationships find themselves to be isolated, and they don't want to talk about what's going on because there's such stigma and there's such shame and all these negative feelings that come with it. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this is my life. That was me. So my family didn't know. I drove to my best friend's house, and oh my God, I was like half naked, wearing a robe, banging on her door at like 1 o'clock in the morning, thinking he's chasing after me. And that was really like the first time that I spoke and the first moment for me to really heal. But for me, I had to hit that rock bottom. I had to be like, okay, we need to do like a hard reset because this is something that completely changed my life. And that was it for me. Me literally escaping him from almost killing me. Like he put a knife to my neck. He threatened to kill me. He threatened to kill my family. He tried to set me on fire. He strangled me. I to the point that I almost lost consciousness and I ended up urinating on myself. Like it was the worst night of my life.
Yeah.
And in me going through that, I realized like, yeah, I got some shit that I need to work on. Like for
Yeah.
real this time.
Yeah. Wow. Totally. And then to compare that kind of with where you are today,
Yeah,
it's a stark difference. So
yeah,
what is your personal development journey really looked like?
yeah. So I anytime I'm asked this question, I always say after hitting my rock bottom and coming back home, lost my car, lost my apartment, lost my job, like everything was just, it was a hard reset. It was a complete start over. The first step for me in my personal development journey was taking accountability. And I know that it's like, what? But it wasn't your fault. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it was my fault that I was in that relationship. But like we said before, I definitely played a role in what I allowed to happen. And there's a
Yeah.
quote. Go ahead.
I think there's something that's been really supportive for me and some of my clients with the difference between accountability and taking the blame of something or saying something is your fault is
Yeah.
that you have to understand what you control and what you do not control. When you take accountability for the things that you control, that's what Lianne is talking about.
Yeah.
You do not control the behavior of another person. Therefore, what the two of you do together isn't your fault and you're not to
Yep.
blame, but you do, we recommend, need to take accountability for what you control in the
Yes.
dynamic.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe that. And that's something that I only realized recently. Like, the only person that you can control is you. You can't control the circumstances that happen around you. You can't fix someone. You can't love someone harder. You can't do anything for that person. They need to be the one to do that same thing for you. And that's what I realized. And there's a quote I actually have right here that I heard from Dr. Phil. I love Dr. Phil. Some people hate him, some people love him. That's my guy. And I was watching one of his episodes and he was talking about the definition of insight. And I want to share it with your audience because it's something that really just stuck with me. So, the key definition, like in the dictionary for insight, is the ability to see and understand why you do the things you do, the ability to see oneself without distortion. So that is the definition. And then he goes on to say, insight is the number one key to change because you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. And when I
Mhm.
heard that, I was like, oh, Dr. Phil, that is a gem. Like that's what it was for me. I had to really see the situation for what it was. I couldn't continue thinking about my ex's potential or only thinking about the times that he made me laugh or how great the sex was or how many times he took me out on a date and told me he loved me. No, that was all a facade. That was all a way for him to gain power and control over me. And then when the honeymoon phase was over, the real person behind that mask showed up. That's who he was. And that's what I needed to realize. And I also needed to look in the mirror and be like, there's some things about you that you really don't like about yourself, which is why you allowed this to happen in the first place and why you decided to go back the next time that it got physically abusive and the next time and the next time. You know what I mean? So for me, the number one thing that started my healing was taking accountability. And then the next part was speaking up and telling someone, I'm not okay, which is super cliche, but it's so true. I realized in leaving that relationship and finding myself where I was, I could not heal these deep seated wounds by myself. So, what did I do? I hired not one, but two life coaches, and I worked with a psychologist. And within that, working with them, doing homework assignments, talking things out, ugly crying again. That is where I was able to really figure out what it was about me that needed healing. But I want
Yeah.
to tell you, like, it's not like I reached this level and, you hear me and you see me now. It's like, oh my God, she's amazing. She's healed. No, anyone who ever says that I'm quote unquote healed, they're full of shit. That life is always going to life. There's always going to be things that come up. There's always triggers, especially for us as victims of abuse that we experience. I was um, diagnosed with PTSD, and that's something that I still struggle with to this day. Granted that they don't happen as often as they used to, but it's an everlasting journey, and I'm just taking it one step at a time. But I think what's been so beneficial for me is being able to share my story with other people so that they know and they feel that they're not alone. Because when I was in my situation, I felt so alone. I thought I was the only person who had ever experienced this because it's not something that I was used to. It's not something that I saw growing up. My friends, no, I never knew anyone who was a victim of domestic violence. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about is really important as well, because I think, all of my studies, all of my experience has really reaffirmed to me that there is no change that can occur when their system is overloaded with shame.
Right.
Does not create change.
Hmm.
And even when was out of my relationship and I got my PTSD diagnosis, even having that label, I kind of thought maybe that it would like get rid of the shame, but it actually
Hmm.
didn't. It
No, not at
actually
all.
added on like a level of shame, like, oh, what's wrong
Yeah.
with me? And then all of this stuff. And every single time that we engage in getting support, so hiring your life coach, hiring your therapist, um, or we speak about things, or we even write them on paper, or we
Hmm.
even just share with ourselves that self-compassion and awareness and accountability, you're very slowly releasing a little bit of shame from the system and a little bit of shame from the system and a little bit of shame from the system. And
Yeah.
once that shame has gotten to a point where it is lessened, not that there's none, because we're human
Right.
beings in a society where there's a lot of shame, we're probably going to feel that. But when it lessens, that's when you can actually start creating change and
Yeah.
saying, oh, who am I? What do I want to do? Who am I going to be? What do I actually want in my life?
Yep.
That's where healing becomes. I think there are so many, like the first stage is that safety, and that's what you're talking about, like removing yourself. And without shame, there also isn't safety. Part of creating
Right.
safety is saying it's okay to be you.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah. I mean, and that's how my podcast was born, right? In the process of that whole healing journey, working with these professionals, talking things out. It's only been a year. I started my podcast on January 1st of 2022, so it's still like a baby, but I realized that I survived this for a reason, and I feel like it's a necessity for me to share what I experienced because I know I'm not the only person who has gone through something really traumatic. And I didn't allow it to completely define me. Not to say that I'm going to erase it. I'm never going to forget about what I experienced. It's a part of my chapter in my book of life. But, I want to be able to show people and tell people that no matter what type of trauma you've gone through, there is a rainbow at the end of the storm. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can use your voice to turn your pain into power and trauma into triumph. And that's really what my podcast is all about. It started off with me sharing my own life stories and personal experiences, and I still do from time to time. But now I feature so many amazing people, and I want you on my podcast. We're going to talk after this. But I feature so many amazing people who have also gone through really traumatic things in their life and have been able to turn it around. And I
Mm.
think it's so important for people to hear that who may be in their season of, struggle or, whatever they're going through right now and feeling like there's not a way out. If we continue having these type of conversations, I hope at least one person hears it and it's like, you know what? If they did it, I know I can too. Yeah, it's going to be a process. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to go really dark and within and really heal those inner shadows, but it's possible if you want to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is possible, my
It
guys.
is. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're living proof, right?
Exactly. We are. Before we wrap this episode up, I'm going to take a few minutes to share with you an invitation that'll support you in taking this work deeper. There could be various reasons why you're here listening today. Perhaps you are a client, a friend, or a colleague. Maybe we just found each other, or maybe we've known each other for a while. What I know to be true is that you're likely here because you're ready to develop the tools to bounce back from the difficulties of life quickly and with more ease by having the tools to regulate your nervous system and find inner peace instead of inner conflict for good. You know that you are ready to say goodbye to the nagger inner critic voice telling you how you should be or getting stuck in the endless what ifs of anxiety. You're ready to know how to set boundaries with your loved ones in a way that increases the love, trust, and connection and doesn't just feel like isolating walls. And you are ready to finally increase your resilience and your body's ability to feel more in control of your big emotions without trying to manipulate them so that you can find your innate wisdom. You're ready to finally celebrate the growth of your relationship or your business without experiencing shame and guilt, even though you're experiencing quicker success than those around you. I support all of my clients in this through a framework of nervous system regulation, emotional alchemy, and self-trust cultivation. And this podcast is just the tip of the iceberg. This is why I'm extending an invitation for you to book a free expansion call, where on this call, we will dive even deeper into exactly what you need to go from feeling overwhelmed, managing big emotions, and falling into anxiety or depression as a result, to having the tools to regulate them quickly and with ease. In this free 30-minute call, you will receive free coaching and support around your unique personal situation. And we will explore whether or not coaching is going to be the best fit for you at this time. Some of the results that clients have achieved after just their expansion call are deep acceptance of their differences, so much that when they share their story now, they attribute most of their self-acceptance to this one 30-minute call, or signing a client right after the call because they leaned into the embodiment work, or feeling deeply seen and understood so much that now when they go to ask their partner for a hug, they no longer feel needy when they're doing it and they get the hug. or switching one habit that they had when communicating with their partner for another, and witnessing more harmony and peace in the relationship instead of resentment and nitpicking. And you deserve this too. So you will find the link in the podcast notes to lock your free call in ASAP. When you book this call, you can expect to walk away with clear, tangible ideas on how to apply this work to your life, and you'll decide if you would like to work with me one-on-one in the process of becoming more resilient and regulated. Lianne, I really want to get your opinion on two things, which are like such buzzwords. I use them, but they're really, I think when we get down to the nitty-gritty of it, they're actually quite nuanced and a little bit confusing when we compared to when we see them on Instagram and all that.
Yeah.
What's your take on how to build self-love and self-confidence? Like those, that was key to actually the reason you were in the situation for me as well, and how to get out of the situation. And those two things are pillars in going from before to after. So how do you do it? What is it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, working with a professional, I worked with a life coach. Shout out to Erica Kramer. She's actually from Australia. She's called the Queen of Confidence, and she's all about building yourself up. And I think the way that I've been able to build up my own self-love and self-confidence is keeping my word to myself in the things that I said I was going to do, right?
Just like hallelujah to that.
That is, and when I heard her and her husband, Hamish Kramer, they had a joint podcast episode. It was the last episode for like a recap of 2022. And he had this segment within it that I was like, the way someone can build trust with themselves and confidence with themselves is to do the things you said you were going to do. Like if you want to go to the gym to lose weight and you set your goal in 2023, because you know, right now we're in the season of like resolutions and all that. You said you want to go to the gym 3 times a week because you want to build up your confidence. You want to look good with yourself. You want to feel good about yourself. Go to the gym 3 times a week. Like you said you were going to do something. So follow through with it. That is the way that you will see change. That is the way that you will learn to trust yourself. And that's what I've been doing. Like I've been taking my personal development so seriously, and I've maintained it day after day after day after day. Yes, there are moments, like I said before, that triggers come up and I allow myself to feel sad in those moments, but I don't allow myself to stay there for too long, because when I stayed in those dark moments for too long, I would just spiral into a hot mess. And I've been in that darkness before. And I know what it feels like. I know what it smells like. I know what what it looks like. I don't want to go back there ever again. So I don't run away from those moments of challenge, but I don't stay in them for too long either. And that's the way that I've been able to build it up. Yeah.
And that's such a practice of self-love. And there's a difference between what you're describing, which is like, I'm there, I'm willing to sit in it. And my practice of love is also getting myself out of it and doing something that builds confidence and trust. And like what you're talking about is reparenting yourself. You're being that loving parent that's like, okay, little children inside fear and anxiety and shame and depression. I see you, I love you, and I am taking you to the gym because that is going to be really good for you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So this is, I think, and Lianne, tell me if you agree with me, but beautiful listeners, I want to actually challenge you. And I know some of you are already doing this because I know you guys, but I want to challenge you to take it a little bit deeper and further and say, like, what is one thing to do that you could do today, even if it's 10 p.m. at night? I literally mean today, don't put it off for tomorrow. What is one thing that you can do today that maybe you don't normally do that would help, that would be an act of love for yourself? And can you actually do it and build the confidence and keep your word to yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I think one huge thing that took me a while to get to was forgiveness.
Mm,
And not necessarily forgiving him, even though I did do a whole ceremony with my daughter. We wrote letters of forgiveness to the people who hurt us at the end of 2022. We read it to each other, we cried, and then we burned it. It was so therapeutic. But one exercise that one of my life coaches had me do was write a letter of forgiveness to myself.
mm,
And that was probably one of the most powerful exercises that I recommend anyone who's listening does it when they feel that they're ready to. With whatever it is that you're healing from, don't put it on the other person. Forgive yourself for whatever feeling comes up. Like I had to forgive myself for staying in that relationship. I had to forgive myself for not loving myself, for not valuing myself, for not seeing what a beautiful person I really am on the inside. And I recommend that you read that letter of forgiveness to yourself while you're looking in the mirror. It can be very uncomfortable. For me, it was so uncomfortable in the beginning, but then the words just came out, the tears came out, the emotion came out. And then tell yourself, I love you. I'm sorry. It's okay. Like that
yeah.
was just, oh my God. It was so powerful. Like I think I got to do it again because
Yeah.
there's some more things that have come up since I did it the first time. But yeah, forgiveness, not just for the other person, but for yourself. That's how you build love for yourself. You have to take care of you the way that you expect others to treat you. You have to be the person to do that for you. Because at the end of the day, the only person who really has your back 100% is you.
Yeah. Oh, that is so beautiful. I agree. And forgiveness is like well, again, one of those things. I remember it was maybe like 5 weeks after my ex had passed away. And I was sitting with one of my really good friends at the time, and I was just saying, hey, like I thought that I would feel better. I don't know why I thought this. I thought that I would feel better at that point.
Right.
Um, and in hindsight, I'm like, oh, you had a journey ahead of you.
Right.
But so it's like 6 weeks, and my friend, she said to me, and she goes, "Hey Sheridan, like, do you think that it might be time to forgive him?" And I
Mm.
think I wanted to vomit. I was like all over her. I was so
Oh,
angry. I was
absolutely.
like, "Are you kidding? Like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. That is
Right.
absurd and ridiculous.
Yep.
No." And I didn't forgive him. I've never sat down and said, I'm going to forgive him because
Mm.
there are certain things that people do that are unforgivable. However,
Absolutely.
love, compassion, insight, and understanding, which is the essence of forgiveness, can still happen. And I kind of think that I've forgiven myself. I've done the letter thing. I've said it. I've said these things in the mirror. I've done the meditation. I've forgiven
Yeah.
myself. And when you forgive yourself, like, forget about the other person. They are
Hmm.
not like, forget about them. Let them go live their life. Like,
Yep.
we love them and we love them from a distance. And, or maybe you don't love them. That's okay as
No,
well.
he's
Yeah.
sitting in prison right now, so I hope he's suffering.
Boundaries, guys.
Right.
But, like finding that and being like, what I think I'm trying to say is like bring the attention back to them. And if anyone around you says maybe you should forgive them, I want you to know that you don't have to, and
Yep.
and like even in that aspect, you're taking your energy and you're putting it on them, and you
Yep.
don't need to do that
You're
ever.
giving them the power and control once again, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's this energetic, like, okay, let me just refocus on you. It's like, no, forget about that. Put them away,
Right.
put them in a box, put them over there. They like
Yes.
done, finished, goodbye.
Yep.
Come back to you and say, what do I need? What do I need? How can I
Hmm.
love myself? And maybe one day the answer is forgiveness and you write the letter.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I felt that way in the beginning too when I interviewed people on my podcast and I would tell bits and pieces about my story and we would talk about forgiveness. I remember people were like, do you think, are you ready to forgive? I'm like, hell no. Like, fuck him. You know what I mean? Like, I hope he's suffering. I still do feel that way. But, I just knew, like you said, that energy, that negativity that I was holding on to, I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And I
Yeah.
knew for me, I was like, I have to just, if I'm really going to let this go and move on with my life, this is something for me that I have to do. And
Yeah.
it was so healing to just get all of those feelings out. And that's why I love journaling too, like writing things out, recording things out. I'm very big on just plugging up my mic and talking about my feelings and letting people hear it. But, whatever works for you, talking to a friend, whatever. I don't know. There's so many things that you can do, but just get those feelings out so you're not holding on to them, because that's going to eat away at you. That's going to keep bringing you down and mess with your mental and all that. It's a never-ending journey. Like I said, there's so many ebbs and flows that comes with this personal development journey, but you can make it happen. You seriously can make it happen, but the only person who can do it is you.
That's it, guys. That's
Drop the mic.
nothing to say after that. It's true. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing
Absolutely.
and really inspiring and giving the power back to all of our wonderful listeners, guys. Thank you so much. Leanne, I have links, so I will make sure that they are in the show notes. So everyone, you can start clicking on them and finding Leanne on Instagram and going and downloading a podcast for your next gym session because you're going to the gym because you promised
Yes.
your loved one,
There you
which is
go.
you. But apart from that, is there anything else that you want to share? Or yeah, is there anything else that you want to share?
I just want to say once again, like, thank you so much for allowing me to feel safe and seen. Anytime I'm able to share my story with a new audience, I hope it's healing people who are receiving it, who it's meant for. But I say this all the time, like every time I'm able to share my story, another cell in my body is healing. I'm reaching another level in my journey of like taking my power back and, figuring out who I am. And I just really, really hope that this resonates with anyone who needs to receive it. And even if you're questioning yourself, like, this sounds kind of familiar, but I don't really know, please like reach out, talk to somebody. You can hit one of us up. My Instagram is always open. Email me. I don't care what you got to do. I don't care if we never met a day in our lives. Like, understand that I've been you. I've felt everything that you're feeling. And I'm sure, Sheridan, you feel the same way. Like, I got you. There's someone out there who will understand everything that you're feeling. And the way that you can start your own healing is by speaking up, as scary as that may be. So please just ask for help. Let someone know, someone that you trust.
Yeah, we're here for you guys. Thank you,
Yes.
Leanne.
Thank you.
A big and special thanks to Upturned for composing this magical piece of music and to GS Studios for mixing it. To find Upturned's other tracks or ask for your own special custom piece of music, go say hello using their contact details in the show notes.